You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Thursday. It is 1:30 p.m. Central. It is 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's popping off in the world of futures options? Well, I suppose we should all find out together, shall we? It is time once again for TWIFO This Week in Futures Options. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. A lot of great stuff up there on the website. A lot of fun stuff on the socials as well, including the most actives throughout the day, which you folks seem to just eat up with a spoon out there. Of course, links to all of our shows out there, so you can get any episode of any program you pretty much ever wanted in our 17-year history. It's all there waiting for you. Of course, if you like what you hear, throw a like, a star, a comment. All that stuff does help new people discover the content. If you too want to discover more content, clock's ticking. You got about a day left on the May Pro Trading Crate. If you're going to join, might as well get in now. Get your name in the hat to win the fabulous prizes that we give away at the end of every month to our pro members, available exclusively theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Of course, options oddities, pro Q&As, early access to a lot of great content, including the stuff we have coming out now from the Options Industry Conference. We recorded a lot of stuff down there, so it's all hitting the main network, starting to dribble out now. It's been up on the pro for a while and more to come on the pro well before it hits the network. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more as we learn who's joining us in the CME Group Hot Seat today. I'm pleased to welcome back our old pal, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to TWIFO, sir. It has been, my goodness, can this be right? It has been over a year since February of last year. Is that correct, sir? I guess he is so surprised he is stunned into silence. Mr. Uncle Mike, can you hear me, sir? Looks like you are muted. Oh, no, we have Uncle Mike, but we do not have him, listeners.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there he is. All right. I guess it's been a year since you've done this, so I guess it makes sense that a year and change.
I guess so. I normally mute at my microphone level, but apparently I must have accidentally hit the mute button on Skype. So I'm not seeing the blinking dot on my microphone. I'm like, no, I'm not muted. But then I look in the Skype and yes, I was. My apologies to all of our TWIFOs.
Yeah, that's what happens when you take a year and a half hiatus from TWIFO, sir. You forget how to work those buttons. Well, tell you what.
Because it's so different on the option block.
So different. Everything's different. It's like a world of difference of it. Tell you what, we'll see if we can wake you up a little bit with some of the old movers and shakers report.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report, the portion of the show where we break down what's lighting it up to the light side and to the dark side, both from an underlying and indeed now newly minted from a vol perspective as well. We'll get to the vol in a little bit. We'll kick things off in the underlying department. And if you follow us on Twitter at Options, you follow CME on Twitter, listeners, you'll see this report tweeted out right before showtime, where you will see, if you looked at the broad panoply of trading products on CME this week, it's been a net red week for the lion's share of them. I would say around 60-40 to 70-30, somewhere in that range, red over green, listeners. And certainly the largest percentage movers are on the dark side this week as well. So intriguing stuff. But Uncle Mike, you are our guest. And you know what? You picked an auspicious week to come back on looking at our movers and shakers, in particular to the light side. What do you say, Mr. Uncle Mike? Just to wake you up from your reverie there, I let you take a spin at running through the movers and shakers this week. Think you can handle that?
Let's do this.
All right, sir. Have at it. Start anywhere you want. You are the host now.
I got to go with silver.
Well, you can't start at number one. Are you looking at the movers and shakers?
Stand by.
This is why we haven't had you on in the year and a half.
You sent to my other email. Sorry. It's not. It's going to take me a second. I apologize. I haven't done this in over a year. Give me a break.
Tell you what. I will show you how it's done. And then when you come back on in a year and a half, maybe longer at this point.
I'm just all out of sorts today. Good gosh.
You're not adding to your case for a return appearance anytime soon. All right, let's keep rolling here. I will show you how it's done. All right. Because you like the light side so much, we're going to go dark side this week. Number 5, it's Chicago wheat. So we're kicking things off in the ags, listeners, off 3.04%. It was number 3 in the other direction last week, up 4 2/3%. By the way, just a side note, just to show you listeners, this hosting thing, everyone thinks they could do it until they get thrust into the big chair. Then all of a sudden, it becomes a little more challenging for them. Number 4, class 3 milk, listeners. We're keeping it in the ags, but we're moving to the dairy right now, off 3.41%. It was number 1 in the same direction last week, off 5.21%. So rough couple of weeks here in dairy. Number 3, 3-month SOFR, off nearly 7%, 6.91%. Number 2, it's one of our frequent offenders these days. It is nat gas, off 11.36% out there, listeners. It was number 1 in the other direction last week, up nearly 10%, 9.68%. So banger couple of weeks. Just every day is a banger day in nat gas, it seems like these days. You might be saying to yourself, what could possibly eclipse nat gas at 11.36%? Well, if you said rough rice, you are the winner chicken dinner this week, listeners. A definitely rough week for rough rice. Not only our number 1 dark side mover, a number 1 percentage mover on the week here at CME, off 16.69%. It was number 5 in the same direction last week, off a little over 3%. So that puts it down nearly 20% in the past couple of weeks. So again, a rough period here for rough rice. Now we'll move to Uncle Mike territory. We'll move to the light side listeners. Number 5, kicking it off in FX. You know it's a quiet week to the light side listeners when we have FX sneaking it in at number 5. When was the last time we talked Swiss franc on this show, listeners? Will we do it this week? Who knows? Maybe. Let's find out. 1.15% to the light side. Number 4, another frequent offender these days, is WTI, up 2.32%. Number 3, Uncle Mike's favorite. It's very appropriate that it is on the show this week. It is Bitcoin, up 2.62%. By the way, WTI number 8 in the other direction last week, off 2.62%. And Bitcoin was number 4 in the same direction last week, up nearly 4%, 3.99%. So a decent, not an explosive, but a decent couple of weeks out here for Bitcoin. Of course, all this news on the crypto front has really been on the ETH side these days, but still rising tide lifts all crypto boats these days. Number 2, back to the ags. It is oats, up 2.84%. Number 4 in the other direction last week, off 3.04%. So pretty much getting back everything that it lost last week almost. And number 1, I think he fixed it. I think he rigged it this week just because he knew he was coming on the show. How else could silver make the number 1 spot on the movers and shakers to the light side this week, listeners, up 3.61%. Uncle Mike, how did you arrange this auspicious development, sir?
I got some buddies in the trading pit. Hi-oh, silver, baby. That's how we roll.
All right, I hope you took notes for your next appearance, sir, on the show. That is how you do the movers and shakers. All right, now I will add an extra bit of edumacation this week for you, because you've added a segment since the last time you were on with us. We don't just stop at underlying anymore, Uncle Mike. No, we go into the vol landscape as well. I won't make you do this one because this is new, but it is a fun one nonetheless, listeners. You guys can run this reports for yourselves. Just type CME and CVOL into your browser. You'll get the CVOL tool. There's no paywall for this at all. It's just available for everybody out. That's how nice they are on the CVOL front. Then go to the date range, go back 1 week, go to the aggregates tab. We're looking at all the aggregate CVOL across all the different product categories, and then group them in order, and you can do exactly what we're doing here today. Listen, let's start to the light side because it's just easier and work our way down. Remember, these are all the aggregate CVOLs. So we'll start in the Treasury CVOL. Remember, there's 2 different Treasury vols. There's Treasury yield vol and there's Treasury price vol. Most of you think of products in terms of price vol. There's an extra component of yield vol when it comes to the rates complex. We're going to start there. Treasury yield vol 113.65. That's a banger. Up 9.41%. So we're seeing some vol, at least yield vol out there this week. Are we also seeing price vol? Well, funny you should ask, listeners. That's number 2, Treasury price vol 6.27. Again, you can see the chasm in difference between the yield volatility over 100 and the price volatility at about a 6.25. Again, the rates complex, not known for being a big driver of vol. 6.25 on the price vol, but that's up over half a point, 0.56. So I don't know, Uncle Mike, did you have a banger week on the Treasury vol front in your back pocket when you came on the show today, sir?
I can't say that I did. I mean, in looking at this, in terms of that being a mover, that is kind of surprising to me, because just looking at the yield on the 10-year over the course of the last month, we've gone from 4.6 to 4.5 to we're back around the 4.6 level. So we've kind of gone down and then back up, but I don't see that having the movement to. I'm a bit surprised at this one with that much change with that little movement, if that makes any sense.
And worth noting, both of those CVOLs are also pinned at their higher end for the week, listeners. The Treasury yield vols had a range of 102.91 on the dark side and 113.65 on the upside, which is pretty much where we're hanging out right now. So pinning the needle on the Treasury yield vol. Price vol, same deal. 5.61 on the low end earlier this week, 6.27 right now. Again, pinning the needle to the upside on the both ends of the Treasury vol, which is interesting. Next, behind it, we have FX. This is a weird day, listener. That's what makes it fun. That's why we have to crunch the numbers out here. FX vol, 6.54. So FX aggregate volatility actually higher than aggregate price volatility for the rates complex. So there you go, listeners. 6.54. We all learned something today. Up 0.24 today. And on the range for the week, it's also pinning the needle for the week. 6.54 is the high for the week, the low 5.91 again earlier this week. So on the upper end of its weekly vol range as well. Then we get to the aggregate commodities CVOL coming in right at the middle, 32.78, off about 0.2 on the week. The range for this one on the week, the low 32.60, hit probably earlier today. The high 33.72 last week. Metals, the aggregate metals CVOL. This is what brought Uncle Mike to the dance. The reason he's on the show today. 19.81, actually coming in a little bit, off 0.21 today. On the week, the range has been about 18.55 on the low end and 20.01 on the high end. So we are exactly 0.2 below the high level for metals vol for the week, which is kind of interesting. The aggregate ag CVOL listeners coming in near the bottom of our list this week at a 22 even, off 0.22. Kind of a quiet week on the ag vol front. The low was 21 2/3 set last week. The high 22.23 set yesterday. So kind of near the upper end of the range, but coming off of a little bit today. And then the bottom of our list, listeners, usually a big vol driver. This week, it is our biggest vol loser. Again, all relative. It's not a huge week. 47.81 coming in the bottom of the list is energy, off 0.28 on the week. We're at the low end for the week. The high came pretty much exactly 3 points above, 50.8. That was probably late last week. So at the low end of the weekly range for volatility. But you know what, listeners? We can't stop there. Uncle Mike has joined us on the show this week. It is time to get into the metals.
Werewolves beware. It's time to explore the options activity in silver, gold, and other shiny things. It's time to talk metals.
All right, everybody, welcome to the shiny stuff, the world of the metals. Go to cmegroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO. Once you're there, you're going to go into that drop down. Metals is pretty much all the way near the bottom. If you're logged into the pro version of Bantix, you will have the volatility indexes, aka the CVOL, at the ultimate bottom of the list. If you're at the free version, metals will pretty much be at the bottom. And then from there, you're going to go into asset class, you're going to go precious. And then I think you know where Uncle Mike wants to start. Uncle Mike, I think it's fair to say, even if it wasn't blowing up this week, we probably would have at least mentioned silver because you were on the show this week. But very auspicious that it is a number one mover to the light side this week, sir. Catch us up. You haven't been on in a while. What the heck is going on in silver?
It's going up. That's what's happening.
There we go. The show is over. We're done. That's your analysis.
What more do you need to know? Silver's going up. So silver's pretty interesting. We're at a pretty interesting time right now with silver in that on the option block, a vast majority of my time talking on the show back in 2011 was either on Apple or silver. Those were the two hot things with which I held a lot of assets in for clients, and it made for great show content. Well, let's be honest. But with silver, it's kind of fallen off through the years in that the peak of it came in 2011, April of 2011, to where we're up around almost at the 50 level in silver. And one of the things that a lot of people don't remember about that time is that when it went up so quickly, they raised the maintenance requirement on it on the futures contracts. And so when that's going to be the case, if you have to put more money into it, you're kind of giving it a margin call in and of itself without needing a margin call in a lot of ways. Now, yeah, I would agree with that because of the fact that it went up so ridiculously quickly that if all of a sudden you're requiring, and I don't know the exact percentages, let's say you're requiring 5% to hold the underlying futures contract, all of a sudden something doubles, then you're only requiring 2.5%, you're going to have to raise it just so you don't have some type of major meltdown catastrophe. But because of that, I believe that was the start of silver coming back down. Now, silver is an interesting mover and shaker in that it doesn't necessarily trend, or at least in the last 20, if you look at a 20-year chart, it's not a trending underlying. It'll bore you to death. And then all of a sudden, every now and then, every 10, 20 years or so, it all of a sudden just shoots up like a bat out of you-know-where. And it comes at a time when you typically least expect it. A lot of times throughout history, people have felt that precious metals are a good inflation hedge. Well, we've had a lot of inflation over the course of the last year, and why wasn't silver moving that much? And now all of a sudden it is. Silver has actually been as low on this year. I'm just looking back to February. We were around the 20 level. Now it's close. It's knocking on the door of 30. We were actually at 29.5. And I'm looking at the SLV version of it. But when you get that much movement in something, there's got to be a reason for it. Now, it could be a couple of reasons. One of them is that the market is behind things and that it's finally realizing that we're actually having inflation. I don't feel that's the case. Typically, markets are ahead of what happens a lot of times. And I don't think that silver is necessarily in a spot to where it's behind. What I actually think of why is silver going like it is, if you look at gold, gold also had a peak in mid to late 2010, and then it really didn't have a lot of, it went down, but then it kind of came back. And then it's also been it's been in a wider trend, or a wider channel, but it has been kind of channeling the last couple of years in a fairly wide channel between 150 and 200, but it's broken above 200. But what I believe is happening in the silver realm is that we're getting a lot of gold buyers that are seeing, hey, on a day when gold goes up 1%, silver is going to go up 5%. Why not put some money into silver? Silver's popular again. And with gold, which is also at all-time highs right now, by the way, with gold doing that, silver's nowhere near its all-time highs. And I believe that what's happening in the recent weeks of silver having the rallies with which it has had, is that it's a lot of precious metal gold buyers that are saying, hey, silver has not been coming along for the party. Let's invite silver and let's buy some silver. And I believe that's what's driving up the price of it, because oftentimes silver is referred to as poor man's gold. And rightfully so. It's still shiny, but it's not gold by any means. And when you're getting greater amounts of movement, that's something that can tend to be pretty exciting. And I've often referred to silver. It rallies like a thief in the night, and the thief is at the front door. I wouldn't say he's quite broken in yet. I'll give the thief credit of breaking and entering once we cross the 30 level in SLV. But for right now, the thief's knocking at the door at silver.
And you mentioned your epic collar. Are you kind of just straight riding the underlying these days? You got any other funky constructions on in silver right now, sir?
Well, so the funky construction that I have in silver right now, for the last few years, what I would do is I would do a hedged risk reversal. And the reason with which that would work would be that I would sell a put, and then I would also buy another put below it for just essentially selling a put spread. And then with the premium that I would take in from the put spread, I would buy a call above where silver is. And I couldn't quite get it to match this year. So the reason for that is interest rates, meaning that calls are priced greater than puts because we have row again. And in this market, we haven't had row in many, 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 many years. So because of interest rates, I did a deep in the money covered call on silver. And then with the extrinsic value credit that I got from it, I bought a call option out of the money. And right now it's been going really well. So I have no caps on silver right now. I was debating over selling some covered calls, but I've been doing this long enough and waiting for that thief to come. I'm not going to cap them. Silver goes back down right now, I can live with it. But if I put on a covered call right now and silver went up another $10, I don't think, I think that I'd be on the America's Most Wanted, or my clients would have me as America's Most Wanted, wanting to kill me. So for right now, we're just riding up the long calls.
There are definitely worse things to be doing in an up market, sir, than riding some long call premium. Let's see what folks are up to out there in silver options, shall we, listeners? Like we mentioned, it's certainly number one on the underlying front. It was up almost 4%, 3.61%. That's, of course, since the end of our show last week. If we go just this week, it's up about 2.94%, hanging out at about a 31.39 as we're coming in to the start of the show here, listeners. Hey, is it a banger week on the overall options volume front? It's decent. It's not the most explosive week we've ever seen in silver history. 63,661 contracts to be precise. And leading the dance this week, listeners, unlike everything else, which is obsessed with all things 0 day, got to trade, got to open and close in the same day. That's what all the cool kids are doing. But not in silver. They say pshaw to that, listeners. Silver's hanging out in July. That's where about 53% of that paper this week, so over half going up in the July contract, has about 26 days to go. So guess what? We're going to hang out there as well, listeners. You might be asking to yourself, what is the volatility out there in July silver, listeners? And the answer would be a fairly healthy 34.2, up about 3.15 points on the week. So again, getting a little bit of juice. Also, Uncle Mike, kind of feeding back to what we were just talking about with the metals out there. The aggregate metals CVOL is down today, but we are near the upper limit for the week. We're at about a 20.01 was the high for the week. We're at a 19.81. So silver obviously contributing a little bit of that upside out here this week. In terms of skew, it's a precious metal, so we expect it to be bid to the upside, and that is pretty much the case. Last week, the calls 9.5% bid. This week, pretty close to the same level, 9.7%. The puts last week, nobody wanted them, 6.6% cheap. This week, 7.3% cheap. So the puts getting a little bit less desirable. The calls a tick more desirable out there this week. And why are the calls leading the dance this week? Well, because it's the 33 calls in July that are topping the list this week with 3,416 contracts. The big day was Tuesday. Remember, this is a truncated holiday week. So you can count on two things on a show like that, listeners. One, volume is probably going to be a little bit lighter. So again, that 63,000 contracts, when you see it in light of a missing day this week, sounds a lot more palatable. And then B, the odds are I'm going to say Monday at some point during the show, listeners. So when I do that, just remember, I actually mean Tuesday. It is a truncated holiday week after all. Tuesday this week, 1,667 of the 33s going up in July, 1,100 on Wednesday, slightly closing there. So maybe you have a little bit of opening and closing dance Tuesday to Wednesday. And then today about 600 on the tape. That was the big dog, followed by, if the 33's a little bit too close to the fire for you listeners, how about the July 35s coming in at number 2, 3,052 of those bad boys going up this week. 1,500 on Tuesday, slightly closing. About 1,000 today against an OI of about 3,000. So they could be piling in more. They could be closing as well. 500 and change on Wednesday, mostly opening there. So weird kind of back and forth. We could have a vertical roll down on Tuesday because so much paper going up in both. Rolling from the 35s down to the 33s? Is that the time you would be doing it now, though, with silver rallying? Are you usually rolling down your calls into a rally? Probably not, but we've seen weirder things, listeners. And then number 3, we have just a call palooza out here this week. Uncle Mike clearly impacting the silver market out here, talking up all these calls. Number 3, it's the 32s in July, going up about 2,400 times this week. Again, the big day was Tuesday, about 1,800 on Tuesday. So the numbers are similar for the 32s, the 35s, and the 33s on Tuesday. Of course, they were closing on the 32s and 35s, opening on the 33s. I could see more of an argument for rolling from the 32s up to the 33s than I can down from the 35s. Either way, they all traded about the same amount, so it's not a fly or anything like that. Could just be pent-up paper from the holiday. Either way, Monday, the big day, about 1,800 going up with the 32s, and the rest of the week kind of light, total of 2,300 on the week. Uncle Mike, you like any of those, the July 32s, 33s, or 35s? Did you have those on your bingo card this week, sir?
I didn't have them on my bingo card, but I actually don't like them because I don't think it's enough time. I think they're going to, I think we could stay silent for a little bit in silver, but I'm looking maybe 6 to 8 months, I'm thinking, is when we're going to get the move. I think July's too soon, personally.
Oh, maybe you'll like these a little better, Mr. Uncle Mike. How about the August 36s? They have a whopping 56 days to go. They went up 1,800 times this week, listeners. Most of that on Monday. 1,200, 1,300 actually on, again, I said Monday. Tuesday, listeners. 300 today, 200 on Wednesday. You like those a little bit better? August 36s, Uncle Mike? You get a little bit more time.
You do get a little bit more time, but I'm liking the long game right now with silver, and by long meaning 6 to 8 months. But yeah, definitely for August, I could see that one happening a lot more than July. That's for sure.
A little more time in the kitchen to cook there. Since we're hanging out in metals, do you want to talk some gold or something else in the metals, or is there another complex and indeed a product that is catching your eye this week, Uncle Mike? You want to go there?
Let's look at the shiny stuff. Let's look at gold.
All right, then. To the big dog of the metals complex, listeners. Go into that asset class drop down. Let's go pop out of silver, go up one slot in the product category. Again, keeping it in the precious metals product family, going up one slot in the product category to gold, the king, the big dog of the metals complex, trading at a 23.64. Coming in to start the show, up a little over 7 handles, or about 0.3%. So you can kind of see what Uncle Mike was laying down there about the relative returns between silver and gold right now. And you could also see relative volume, about 3x going up in gold versus silver this week. 63,000 roughly in silver versus 183,000 so far this week in gold. Mr. Uncle Mike, we always talk silver with you, but what's catching your eye in the big dog of the shiny stuff this week?
Well, in the big dog, we have roughly a 5% pullback over the course of the last 10 days. So if you are looking to go the gold route, and that's roughly a 5% pullback off of an all-time high. And so what's interesting is that if you compare that to silver also had its all-time high on May 20th as well. But in looking at this, the interesting part about silver is that silver made a run at it yesterday. Yesterday, it actually came close to the all-time high again. It didn't quite get it. Whereas with gold, in the short term, like if you are trading day in, day out, gold's been relatively flat over the course of the last week or so. It dropped the early part of last week. And I'm sorry, gold hit its all-time high a couple days before silver did, so I misspoke. I apologize. But from there, gold has been relatively flat over the course of the last week. And so if you are looking to take a position in gold, it could be building up a little bit of a base again off of its pullback from the all-time high. So you may have your opportunity in gold, but you may have it in silver as well, but the intriguing part about gold is that it's been flat since it's pulled back from its all-time high.
Let's see if it's flat out there this week from a volume perspective. Like I said, 183,000. The answer is no. It's decent paper. It's not the most active week we've seen for gold, but then again, it's a truncated holiday week. We usually expect to see it around, let's say, 225 or so. So if you added on another day to this, you probably would be around that level. So it seems like a fairly typical volume week out here for gold. And once again, we're hanging out in July, listeners, about 26 days to go. That's where 30.5% of the volume going up in gold this week. The vol in gold, again, you can also see one of the other things that probably attracts Uncle Mike and a lot of the other boys to the silver yard out there is a little bit more vol in the silver hills than there is in gold. Gold right now in that July contract, a 13.95, up about a quarter of a point. So getting some vol again this week, which is also leading into why that aggregate metals vol is near the higher end that it has been for the week. But still, not a lot of juice. Not a lot of juice in gold vol out here right now, listeners. So you're talking about a similar level right now, gold vol versus VIX. I don't know, Uncle Mike, is that a peers trade that intrigues you? VIX versus gold vol? And which would you buy and which would you sell, sir?
I would suppose if I had to buy and sell, I would rather buy VIX vol right now if I had to, and then sell gold vol if I had to. But I can't say that idea intrigues me by any means.
Don't lie to the people. You told me before the show you wanted to talk all things metals versus VIX peers trade. So I don't know why you're lying to the people now, sir.
No, I said I wanted to talk nothing but how bullish I am on Bitcoin as long as we're going down fantasy land.
That's coming up soon. Never fret, sir. We'll get there. But yes, that you got to buy the VIX and that peers trade, I would think. Just the potential for upside, so much more dramatic. Not that gold can't pop from a vol perspective. It has, but I think we all know what VIX can do in that scenario. Maybe that's a fun poll question. Peers trade. Which would you rather have, listeners? Which are you buying? Which are you selling? Both VIX and gold vol hanging out at about a 13 3/4 right now, a little bit higher than that in gold. In terms of skew, you know the bids to the upside, listeners. 4% bid were the calls last week, 4.7% this week. The puts last week about 2% cheap. This week, 2.6% cheap. So a little bit cheaper, kind of following a similar trajectory to what we saw in silver. And in terms of action, it's all upside calls all the time. How about the 2600s in July, listeners? Are those floating your boat? They went up 5,200 times this week. But you know what? Those are not the volume leader this week. No, it's a tight race for the number one spot. We actually have to award that crown. A lot of 5,000 lots going up this week. But the biggest of the bunch was the August 2500s. These have about 56 days to go. These August 2500s going up 5,725 times this week. The big day was Tuesday, 3,100 on Tuesday, mostly opening there, and about 1,300 each yesterday and today. Slightly closing, looks like yesterday. Today, anyone's guess, but the OI is 7,000 coming into today, so they could be paring them down. We've had a little bit of a run. I don't know if you want to take off the 2500s in August just yet. You got about 60 days to go, and that future's at a 2364. So you got a ways to go, but maybe somebody is getting the heck out of Dodge on the August 2500s. Either way, they are the number one big dog trade out here this week, listeners. But I said it was a tight race because right behind it, we go even farther, listeners. We go all the way out to October. Again, just like a precious metal, longer term and upside. I mean, I could write the script for this every week in the metals. For the most part, it tends to follow suit. And this is interesting. The 2500s in October, listeners, doing 5,500 contracts this week. So right behind the number one spot at number two. Almost all of that today, 5,421 of the October 2500s going up today, listeners. Only 118 went up on Tuesday, and a whopping goose egg. A whopping goose egg yesterday. That future's at a 23.85 if you are intrigued, listeners. The vol out there is a 13.61. Actually kind of unched on the week. And the calls got a heck of a lot more bid. They're 8.7% bid this week versus 8.1% bid last week. All of that a long way around to make me think someone probably is buying these bad boys. Of course, we also know of past his prologue in the metal. Not a lot of people selling upside. It's usually buying. I don't know, Uncle Mike, October 2500s opening in gold with that future at a 2364. You're talking, actually 2385, excuse me. You're talking 118 days to go. It's not quite in your 6-month time frame, but what do you think of these?
Well, correct. It's not, but the fact that we've had a more flat gold market over the course of the last week, I actually don't think that's a bad thing to get into if you're looking to get into some type of short-term gold, because of the fact that we have been flat over the course of the last week since the all-time highs with gold. It is a little bit longer than August, and gold is looking like it's more building a base at this stage as opposed to silver, which is a little bit more choppy at this point. Now, granted, once again, the thief of the night could break in with silver, but with gold, it's been a little bit more steady in terms of its pullback. So I don't know if I would not mock a man for owning that call option or woman.
Never let it be said, Uncle Mike will mock a man for owning his call. Worth noting, I'm looking here to October, listeners, because 5,000 lots, like I said, flying fast and furious all over the place this week, listeners, including opening in October. You like those, listeners? Because if you don't, allow me to present. Let's go out to January next year. Another 5,000 lot, 5,000 exactly of the 2800s in January. If you're wondering when do those go up, all of that today, listeners. The OI is only 55 contracts, so somebody is opening for 5,000 as well, right as we speak on the Jan 2800s. Let's see, the Jan future, you're talking at a 2433. So you're going out a ways. Next winter, January, beginning of next year. Can you even think out that far, listeners, given how crazy these markets are? Somebody is liking the 2800s. The vol out there, a little bit frothier, actually, at about a 15.1. And that's up 1.17 points. So that's a huge vol move. That usually is indicative that somebody's probably buying some vol. And then looking at these calls, they were 7.7% bid on the call wing last week, 11.3% bid this week. So all that a long way around to backing into somebody's buying the 2800s in January right now as we speak, listeners. I just looked to see if those other Octobers were maybe a bit of a roll, because a lot of 5,000 lots going up, maybe rolling out. But no, that was opening across the board, including here on the Jan. So Mr. Uncle Mike, I guess gun to your head. Are you going October 2500s, or you like these Jan 2800s a little better, sir? Both 5,000 lots.
I mean, with a gun to my head, I'd pick the Jan 2800s just because there is more time. Now, do I have to close them? Do I have to hold them till expiration? That's the question I'm asking to the man holding the gun to my head.
The rules of this game are fluid, sir. You can get out whenever you want. How about that? I'm a nice guy.
I'd go with more time in this case because of the fact that if gold does go higher to that level, typically there's the reverse skew that exists in the metals. And so vol going higher as gold goes higher, I think I would try to play the vol going higher with a longer time frame than I would a more near-term strike price. So yeah, I think I'd go with a gun to my head, 2,800 Jans, please, sir, and please don't shoot me.
Well, we got a little bit of time left. We've been talking a lot of metals already, Uncle Mike. Metals, just lighting up the tape out here. Where do you feel like going next? We can go to your beloved Ags. Of course, there's Rough Rice and Class 3 Milk and Chicago Wheat and Oats this week. Or your beloved FX with Swiss franc. I know you're huge in Swiss franc USD. Or we've got some energy hitting it with WTI and Nat Gas. I probably won't put the gun to your head to make you talk Bitcoin unless you really want to. Or is there another product you want to talk about, Uncle Mike? You're the guest. I'll let you choose.
Let's talk currencies. What the heck?
Oh, to the world of FX we go.
The dollar, the euro, the yen, and more. It's time to explore what's happening in major currency options around the world. It's time to talk FX.
Wow, I'm glad you said that, Uncle Mike, because that gives me a chance to dust off that drop. I don't get my value worth out of that FX drop at all, Uncle Mike. We very rarely use it. I had to blow the dust off the cobwebs of the studio just to find it out there, listeners. So FX, usually when we're talking FX, we're going to go to the majors. We're going to go a Euro USD, maybe, Yen USD. We're not going there today, though, listeners. We're going to the hinterlands, to the wilds of FX, back to the crazy town of Swiss franc USD. You may know it, you may love it from the Black Swan event that occurred out here a few years back. Kind of blew everyone's mind. Swiss franc, one of the more staid FX products, and when they tend to have these outlier moves, kind of blows everyone's mind. Go type that into your browser if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, listeners. Type in Black Swan and Swiss franc. just to type that in and see what they say there, listeners, because I think you will be intrigued. Is this week a black swan for the Swiss franc? The answer is no. It's at 1.1 pretty much right now, up about 0.01 and a quarter on the week. That moves it up 1.14%. So not exactly a banger. In terms of options volume, also not a banger. 652 contracts this week, listeners. The big dog, the 1 1/8 calls going out in about 15 days, doing a whopping 244. That's a pretty active week for the Swiss franc. About a third of the paper has gone up here, more than that, going up in these 1 1/8 calls out here. All that today, pretty much. 241 today, a whopping 3 lot yesterday. So Swiss franc, not exactly a banger. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, I know you're huge on the Swiss franc. What's catching your eye out there? And are there any other FX peers that catch your eye these days?
No, it's not. But I think what's first off, I think that we need to quote my good friends from the band AC/DC, who have no idea who I actually am. They're actually bullish on the British pound. Were you aware of that?
I'm not. I'm looking for the joke in my mind because I know most of the AC/DC catalog, but it's not coming to mind, sir.
So in the song Money Talks, there's a line in there, the dollar's up, down, you better buy the pound.
Oh, really? See, all the different layers of AC/DC, sir. Didn't know they were into FX as well. You got to dig deep into the catalog, sir. I like it.
I didn't either, but that actually is one of their lines in their song Money Talks from their Razor's Edge album. So we do have to get that established first, of AC/DC sentiment back in the 90s on the British pound. You had it now. You ship them out. The dollar's up, down. You better buy the pound. The claim is on you. With that, I think that is the tail wagging the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail with currency and the U.S. dollar? So, of course, we just talked about all the rallies that we have going on in the precious metals. We have oil. With what's going on there, is that something that, and that's just the debate that seems like it's been going on for at least the 20 years that I've been in the business. Does oil drive the dollar, or does the dollar drive the price of oil? And so right now, oil is higher, but it's not by any means on a major rally. It's kind of channeling at a higher level over the course of the last couple of years. And so What interests me is that I actually feel, getting back to currency, whether it's the Swiss franc, the euro, the British, or whatever, I think that elections will play a big role in this. If we get some type of policy in place that's going to drive down the price of oil, I think that whether it's Biden or Trump or whatever, not trying to show political favoritism here, but what I am trying to show is that when we get to debate season coming up over the course of the next few months, and whoever's leading in the polls is talking about how they're going to get rid of all those darn electric vehicles and promote oil in the United States, or get rid of those darn gas-powered vehicles and promote the electric vehicle, that's going to play a factor in things. And so when you have oil playing a part in this, it's something with which you need to watch. Like I was saying, does the dog wag the tail, or does the tail wag the dog? The other thing is precious metals and the US dollar. How is that going to affect it? So not only with the Swiss franc, but just with the dollar and how it relates to other currencies throughout the world, I feel that energy and precious metals are going to be a big part of that, especially going into debate season.
Look at you tying it all back in together, sir. A year and a half off, you developed some surprising skills out there, Mr. Uncle Mike.
I got the skills to pay the bills.
There you go. Let's see what's going on in the rest of the FX complex, since we're hanging out here anyway, listeners. And because, we paid for that drop, we might as well get some value out of it. If you're wondering how some of the other FX majors stack up to the beast that is Swiss franc USD with its roughly 600 contracts, you've got right now the yen USD doing about 14,000 contracts. Again, this is a truncated holiday week, so that's not typical volume, but it's decent, all things considered. Pound USD coming in around the same volume level, 14,000 contracts about on the tape right now. The volume leader, of course, the big dog, that's going to be Euro USD coming in at about exactly 50,000 contracts. So let's hang our hats out there before we wrap up for this week, shall we, listeners? Again, FX. Don't get to talk it. Wherever he is right now, our buddy Mr. Rich Excel must be excited. His ears must be burning because he's an old school FX guy. We don't get enough time and really opportunity to talk FX here on the show. Out to Euro USD we go at a 1.08. That spread's been an intriguing one to watch ever since the onset of the pandemic, when really a lot of these currencies took a hit. And all of a sudden, the dollar was on parity with things like the euro and even exceeding the pound for a while there. So intriguing stuff. FX is getting hot when my teenage son is mentioning about how the dollar is strong against the yen, and maybe we should go to Japan. So FX starting to permeate the teenage mind share out there as well. 50,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog, listeners, going out to August. Euro USD, they don't want to play in your 0 day, even though they have them. There are contracts going out in about a day, but they're not playing there this week, listeners. They're playing in the August contract. It has about 71 days to go. That's at about a 1.08875. If you like your funky strikes, FX is the complex for you, listeners. What is the vol in Euro USD in August? It is a whopping 5.39. It makes Treasury vol look downright explosive by comparison. That's up 0.14 on the week, so getting a little bit frothier again this week, which is also probably why FX is in our winners on the vol front for today on our aggregate CVOL, and also pretty close to its high for the week. Getting a little bit of froth, a little bit of juice back again in FX, probably for all the reasons Uncle Mike was just laying down. In terms of skew, not a huge evolution there. 4.2% bid were the puts last week. They remain so this week, so no evolution there. The calls, 1.6% cheap last week. This week, 1.3% cheap. So not a heck of a lot of evolution. And again, you're starting from a baseline of around a 5. So it would take a lot of skew to really skew that, pun intended, out there. Hefty bidder offer to really make it material out here, starting with a baseline of a 5. And in terms of action, it was the 1 1/8 calls in August, leading the dance out here this week by a country mile, doing 6,035 almost all of that on Tuesday. 6,019 on Tuesday, a whopping 11 on Wednesday, and a whopping 5 today. The OI is about 6,000, so clearly they were opening on Tuesday. So 1 1/8 calls, 6,000 times. That's kind of leading the dance out here. Let's go scroll around a little bit, see if we can find any other interesting and or aberrant paper before we get out of here for this week and give Uncle Mike another rest for another, year and a half out there. Listen, give him time to study up on how to do the movers and shakers out there. Yeah, let's go a little bit closer to home, listeners. Let's go to about almost 8 days to go. Got to the June contract that expires in about 8 days. That one we have doing about 13, almost 14% of the paper this week, including 2,500 of the 1.09 calls. That futures at a 1.084, so slightly out of the money calls, going up 2,500 times this week. Most of that on Tuesday, 1,800 on Tuesday. Looks like folks were bailing on Tuesday, 600 on Wednesday, slightly opening there, and about less than 100 today, actually. So the OI coming into today, 3,800. So it seems like some folks maybe getting the heck out of Dodge on these slightly out of the money calls with about 8 days to go here. In everyone's favorite Euro USD. All right, listeners, that music means we come to the end of another epic journey. Man, what a fun journey. Uncle Mike, I kind of thought we'd talk some precious metals, but I certainly didn't have FX on my docket for this week. So you are still full of surprises, sir. Well done.
That's what I'm all about.
And if folks in the meantime want to get some surprises of their own in the, year and a half between your appearances here on TWIFO, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, a couple things. I'm going to be doing a webinar this Tuesday night, June 4th, on the 60-40 portfolio versus a hedged equity portfolio, the pros and cons of each. For more information on that, follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw. I'll be posting an invite on there actually shortly after the show. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. I will post it there as well. If you are looking for a financial advisor who deals with this option stuff, feel free to reach out to me. Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. Set up an appointment with me. Would love to have a conversation with you.
60-40, it's dead. Stick a fork in it. It's done, sir. I don't know what you're debating. We have already declared it dead many times. Too late.
Come to the webinar and find out.
You can't put a defibrillator on it and bring it back to life. Or maybe Uncle Mike can. Give him a follow over there at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw on Twitter, or check him out, stcharleswealth.com, if you too would like to learn more. Of course, you know where to go if you want to learn more about all this fun stuff we're talking about here on the show, and a whole bunch more. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO, is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Of course, if you want to check out the CVOL, you can just type that into your browser pretty much anywhere. CME Group and CVOL, you'll get that tool. You can play around with that till your heart's content. If you have questions, you're intrigued by CVOL, you want to hear more about it on the show, hit us up, let us know. It's an intriguing category for you folks, and something certainly worthy of note, and certainly something to keep an eye on as we roll on into the election season, where one thing is for certain, you're probably going to get a little taste of vol out there. How it plays out is the question. Maybe CVOL will have some answers for us. That will do it for us on the network today. Back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, talking all things vol. I'll probably be joined by the once and future and now present Dr. V Stocks, as well as who else? Who else will join us on the show? Got to tune in to Vol Views to find out. After that, one final time for the week, exclusively for all you pro folks out there, we're heading out to a little bit of options oddities with the Rock Lobster. What kind of weird, crazy trades do we have in store for you this week? I guess you got to tune in to find out. If you're not on the pro yet, what are you doing? The clock is ticking on the May Pro Trading Crate. You got about a day left, so get on over there, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Get your name in the hat. You too want to win the May Pro Trading Crate. Each one is bespoke. They are all awesome. We put them together, custom, just for you folks, because we like you. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Just check the other day. 350 we're closing in on episodes waiting for you there the second you hit that button. So there's some goodness to be found. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Then we're off again for the weekend, back again on Monday with the aforementioned Uncle Mike for a little bit of the option block, all the way through to next Thursday, another episode of This Week in Futures Options. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.